Coming up on show 802, electric delivery vans are in the spotlight today, with plenty of great examples. If you stick around, I'll tell you more. Plus on the podcast today, Germany imposes the idea of chargers at petrol stations. The Tesla Model 3 does well in the UK again. And a Porsche Taycan DC fast charging test. Those stories and a lot more coming up today. Well, good morning, good afternoon or good evening. In fact, wherever you're listening in the world, welcome to EV News Daily, the edition for Sunday, 7th of June. My name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story so you don't have to. This is huge news in Germany. Several European countries are relying on incentives around the purchasing of cars, and particularly EVs, actually, and things like scrapping bonuses of old petrol and diesel cars. But some countries are adding additional incentives as well for EVs. It's the case in France, for instance. They're adding about another 7,000 euros of incentives to take off the price of an EV if it's less than 45 grand, I think. And in Germany... What about in Germany? Well, DriveTribe says on the other side of the Rhine, the incentive might be 6,000 euros for an EV costing up to 40,000 euros. But to incentivize Germans to switch to electric cars, the government will impose electric charging stations at all service stations. And that's interesting because there's a couple of schools of thought on this. Firstly, we don't use EVs the way that petrol and diesel cars are used in terms of stopping for 5 to 10 minutes to add in your fuel at a petrol and diesel station. It is more often than not done overnight and at home. And if you do go on a road trip, you are more likely to use those service stations that are on the main roads in order to fast charge. The other school of thought is that in many places, petrol stations are ideally located in terms of access to a lot of electricity and the grid, but also in many built-up areas, petrol and diesel stations those service stations are pieces of land that if they weren't used for that, for the delivery of fuel and protected, in some cases, then they would be built upon because you can make much more money with real estate. And so actually in a highly built-up urban environment, petrol stations are kind of like a golden pocket of land. And actually, if we're not going to be serving petrol on them, let's serve electrons on them. On the other hand, again, go back to the original point of view, why should we replace one particular behaviour with a substitute exactly for EVs when that's not how EVs are driven, or not at least how the majority of people don't need to go to their local petrol station 5 minutes away from their house to go and fill up with fuel, because that you can't put petrol in your car at home. A couple of schools of thought on that, and I'm sure you have an opinion, and maybe there's a bit of truth in both of them, actually. One thing's for certain, though, as petrol drivers do go and get their fix of fuel, if there are EV chargers at those stations, they're more likely to see the kind of EVs that are highly desirable to people charging up with electric. And actually, it might normalise them a little bit, because I'm aware that for some people, the idea of EVs is still a little bit wooey, a little bit scary. There's 3 different plugs, and then there's there's different cars. There's different names and CCS and CHAdeMO. What does it all mean? Different speeds. What does it all mean if you're new to it and you really are at the beginning of that process of learning about EVs? It is a little bit overwhelming. All right, let's move on. Well, last month in the UK, May 2020 saw UK plug-in EV sales hit a market share of 16%. There's a massive caveat coming, by the way, with a cumulative share to date, year to date, of 7.2%, which is triple last year's result. Tesla Model 3 again takes the prize of the number one car in this country. Not number one EV. Well, of course, it is the number one EV, because it's also the number one vehicle sold. It was in April, and it is in May. Says Max Holland for Clean Technica. UK auto market volume was down 89%. And there's the caveat. It's not a normal month. April and May were not normal months. And if anybody wants to see an EV at the top of the charts, it's gonna be me, okay? However, it's not a normal month. It's amazing that Tesla was able, because of the way they sell their cars, which is purely online, and the way that they deliver them, they were already set up in many ways for people not having to go to a dealer to go look at the car, test drive the car, because you just can't do that. Even with used cars or certified pre-owned, the CPO cars online, it's still a stock image. It's not the real picture of the real car. It's just a stock image of that model. You don't even get to see the car. You can buy it, or you can buy used cars from Tesla, but you can go and collect the car, and if you're not happy, then you can take it from there, I guess, if it was improperly described. So they were set up in a way to deal with the lockdown situation and the closure of car dealers and things like that. However, when we get back to a normal, or whatever normal is, a normal month, you won't see the Model 3 at the top of the charts, but I hope it doesn't slip too far down. Model 3 was an outstanding performer last month. 35% of the battery electric vehicle market, top spot of any car sold in May, but with 852. Yeah, didn't even sell 1,000 cars, and it got to the number one spot. And we're quite a big car market here in this country. So, good news with a little bit of reality sprinkled around the edges of that one. Okay, let's move on. French media reporting that the new Peugeot 3008 will be a plug-in version and a pure electric version, says DriveTribe. According to French media, it's going to be the new DS4. So that'll be the DS4 E-Tense, the Peugeot Ii 3008. Still open to which drivetrain that the E-Tense is going to receive. Well, you could use the drivetrain that's going into many different similar cars like the E208 and the DS3 Crossback E-Tense, and the vans as well are all getting the 100 kilowatt system with 50 kilowatt hour battery. However, with a basic price of €45,000 for the E3008 whenever it arrives, customers may expect a little more from a high-end compact car, and that could be by the end of 2020. According to reports, PSA will officially present the DS4 by the end of the year. Fastned, which is the European fast charging network, recently had the opportunity to record charging sessions of the Porsche Taycan, which comes in 4 versions, one with the 79.2 kilowatt hour battery, and 3 of them with the larger 93.4 kilowatt hour battery. Well, the company shared the results about the charging performance so we can all understand how it works now, says Inside EVs. That's what I love about Fastned. They're really proactive in the community as well, so they are clearly sensible. So when a car that isn't yet on the market shows up and charges, because it's a prototype or a test car, either through an overt agreement with the car maker or just because they don't want to burn their bridges, they have it, but they don't release that information, which is good. It's respectful. It keeps us all guessing, and that's part of the fun, isn't it? However, with the Porsche Taycan, it's well and truly out there now, so Fastned are releasing their charging curves for it, well, at least what they see on their own chargers. The peak DC charging power for the Taycan in the bigger battery version, the 93.4, is 270 kilowatts, because Fastned have some 300 kilowatt chargers. If they charge on the 175 kilowatt chargers, it peaks at about 165. The smaller battery pack, by the way, not quite as fast, no surprises there. The top speed goes down from 270 to 225 kilowatts, which would be on par with, well, a little bit below Tesla's Model 3 and Model Y on the Supercharger V3, although those do ramp down very, very quickly. It's above 250 kilowatts on the bigger battery for about 23% of the battery. So if you arrive at a very low battery, low state of charge it's called, you get there about 2%. It will hold that maximum charge rate above 250 kilowatts on the big battery until it's about 25% full, and then it starts to dip down a little bit. Okay, moving on. And when Audi unveiled the e-tron Sportback for the US market back at the end of April, it said that the SUV was targeting 218 miles of range between charges. Well, the EPA have done their tests, and as it turns out, they've rated the car at 218 miles. According to Quattro Daily, the new Audi e-tron Sportback will arrive at dealers across the US this summer in 55 spec. Here in Europe, we also get the 50 and the 55. I mentioned vans at the start of the show. Commercial vans are emerging as a key growth area for electrification, and General Motors is developing a vehicle for the sector, according to a Reuters report. GM's interest shows how a powerful legacy automaker wants in on what a Morgan Stanley analyst called America's hottest new vehicle. In a research note recently, says Axios, Amazon in late 2019 announced their 100,000 vans coming from Rivian and their investment as well. They'll have 10,000 of them working by 2022. Ford announced in March it's developing an electric version of the Transit cargo van. UPS wants 10,000 of those. UPS wants 10,000 of the arrival vans from the UK. FCA, their commercial arm, Fiat Professional, presents the production version of its all-electric Ducato van. It's called the Fiat Ii Ducato. A year after the first prototype was shown in the middle of last year. It will be the first electric Ducato in the 39-year history of the model. It says inside EVs, WLTP range, 124 miles on the small battery, 205 miles, that's 330 Ks, on the big battery. General Motors also developing their van aimed at business users, joining a growing list of car makers planning EVs for the delivery van segment. GM's plan to develop an EV van hasn't been previously reported. Well, the number one US car maker didn't confirm the van, but it did say it had plans to introduce 20 new EV vehicles, not cars, by 2023 in a variety of body styles. Well, suppliers that are familiar with GM's plans and Ford's have been talking to Reuters and said that the Detroit automakers, which also count trucks and commercial vehicles among their most profitable businesses, don't want to, and I quote, leave the door open for Tesla, like they did with consumer passenger cars. That's an Autoblog report there. And that's an interesting take on things. Maybe they're looking at what Tesla did, eating a little bit of their lunch, and for so long saying, not a problem, not a problem, not a problem. They're a small electric car maker. We can't hear you. La la, fingers in our ears. But then when it comes to where they really make their money, trucks and commercial vehicles, all of a sudden, they do not want an electric version of the Ford F-150. What could that be? Oh, the Cybertruck. Is, despite its bold styling, destroying that profit line. There's vans like the Peugeot Ii Traveler coming. Well, the new Peugeot Ii Traveler is all electric. It has, again, the same 330 kilometers of range, 205 miles, the two battery sizes, which are becoming increasingly common on this platform. That's 50 or 75 kilowatt hours. 3 lengths, a height of 1.9 meters, which is important in terms of height restrictions for some things and getting under barriers. But it will also come with 9 seats. That is going to be, apart from van usage, minibus or minivan usage, hugely popular for moving people around, for moving groups of workers around or airport runs and things like that. 9 seats in the Peugeot Ii Traveler. As DriveTribe points out, what's important with the Ii Traveler compared to the Peugeot Ii Expert is the cab. The model is available in its 2 versions, the Shuttle and the Combi Space. Both versions available in different lengths. The Shuttle version is aimed at transport companies like taxis and airports and hotel shuttles. The business version has between 5 and 9 seats, and there's a business VIP version they're making as well. All electric, 7 leather seats, comfort features like different zoned air conditioning. There's the Kangoo ZE Business Plus. That starts at a retail price of £20,000 without VAT. It's a business vehicle and it includes the grant as well. And it's got 2 wheelbases on that, 33 or 44 it's got a 33 kilowatt hour battery and it's got a 44 kilowatt motor. So a pretty small van EV, but 143 miles. You can see there's so many vans coming. Recently, we've talked on the podcast about the Peugeot Ii Expert, the Opel/Vauxhall Ii Zafira, the Vivaro E, the Citroën Ii Jumpy. Many of these are, as you may well know, all basically the same platform, just the different companies within the group putting their own styling and body on top of that. But it's all very, very sensible specs, by the way. 100 kilowatt charging and good battery sizes as well, like I mentioned. So the rise of the electric delivery van / minibus, depending on how you deck out the inside of it, is really taking off. It's been a crazy couple of months. All the announcements for these kind of happened about a year ago, and there was kind of the premieres of them, the press releases going out, but now we're being told when they're going on sale by the end of the year. So many businesses that have been saying, look, I would go EV, but I need a van that can carry a certain payload and do 200 miles. Well, there you go. They're all arriving. Germany is, I mentioned a little while ago, increasing its incentives. But what about the Netherlands? Well, the Netherlands has created new incentives. They become effective on the 1st of July next month for new EV buyers, but also buyers of used EVs. You get €4,000 off a new EV and €2,000 off a used EV. And that is provisioned in the budget until 2025. More incentives around Europe to go EV. And finally, Chinese EVs arriving in Europe. The iWays car is coming. The U5, the Chinese SUV, promises more than decent performance. Has a 63 kilowatt hour battery, and that's about 285 miles of all-electric range. They say, we'll see. It's going to be less than that. According to Auto Evolution, the U5 was going to be shown in final production form in March at the Geneva Motor Show, which obviously didn't happen. At the very last minute, it was cancelled about 2 or 3 days before, wasn't it? But the ongoing health crisis means that the Chinese car company hasn't necessarily changed all of their plans. The cars are still arriving in Europe on the tiny French island of Corsica, and they're arriving in July. There's going to be 500 of them arriving. They're going to be given to the Hertz car rental company for testing, and obviously in a kind of Corsica being an island, very much an enclosed ecosystem, that you can look at how the car goes in Europe. The U5 is now available for European customers to order, though. They're going to be heading to Germany, Norway, Switzerland and the Netherlands. Wow, busy old day of news today. And that's before we even get to Question of the Week this week. I asked you on Question of the Week to tell me your answers to this for Sunday's show. What do you think is affordable for an EV? I know that everyone's answer was going to be different on this, but what is affordability for an EV? Donald R. says affordable electric vehicles should be under $5,000. Stephen Troyer on YouTube says, I'm in the US. I've always bought cars that only have a few years left in them. And $1,000 to $2,000 in my experience is the definition of an affordable car. And in the EV world, that means a golf cart. Well, Stephen, have you looked at the price of electric golf carts? I mean, they cost a lot more than $2,000. You spend $10,000 on an electric golf cart if you want to. Roger Starkey on YouTube says, slightly more than the market comparable ICE is the right price of affordable EV. Understanding on YouTube is his name. Says, in Canada, anything under 40,000 Canadian dollars or 30,000 US is considered affordable to me. Most people look at that and consider a used car as an option. Even a Civic will have a 3 in front of it by the time you leave the showroom. The user Captain Prototype on YouTube says €25,000 I consider affordable for an EV. I wouldn't be surprised if you can buy a new EV for $18,000 in the not too distant future. Fabian says, my family normally buys cars around $5,000 and we once saw a Leaf for that price, so we bought one. We became first-time EV owners. Our affordability level is now $5,000 because that's the price you got. You got to steal, my friend. Any Leaf for $5,000, unless it had done ridiculous mileage. I'm guessing it hadn't. It wasn't falling apart. $5,000? Goodness me, they didn't know what they were selling you. You got a bargain. Jim Myers on YouTube says, depending on the size of the car, it's a good point actually, between a Zoe and a Model 3, $25,000 to $35,000. He is from Bellingham, 90 miles north of Seattle, and that is his definition of affordable for an EV. Stephen Bollinger on YouTube says, question of the week, when will EVs be affordable? Well, they are, because you need to compare the purchase price with the lifetime fuel, maintenance and insurance. Compare all the costs. EVs are competitive already. Interesting. Hello to Dan from Canada. I need the winter range of a Hyundai Kona EV with the seating and cargo space of an Ioniq and the drive-away price of an Ioniq plug-in hybrid. Until there's a pure EV like that, our current plug-in will have to do. David Barber on email says, an affordable EV for most people means they can choose petrol, diesel or electric at the same price. It's VW's aim and I applaud them for this, says David. But imagine if you could buy an EV that was cheaper than petrol. Let's have big electric dreams. Gil Rosado, I don't know, it's Gil. Oh, you must let me know how I say your name. I feel awful if I get it wrong. I think EVs should be considered affordable because the price gap between ICE and EVs is a few $1,000s, needs to be a few $1,000s at most. Whilst I'm into EVs, I purchased a Mazda CX-30 rather than the Kona EV because it was an $18,000 difference in top trims. You're absolutely right, of course. Robert in Brisbane says, here in Australia, what's affordable is all in the mind of the buyer. The Model 3 is an affordable BMW 3 Series rival. The Ioniq does not aspire to that market and yet is expensive. The Mini Electric will be about $5,000 more than the petrol Cooper S because we don't have incentives, but you could easily spec a Cooper in petrol above that price. Finally, the Skoda Citigo could be the cheapest EV if sold in Australia, and it is the true mini successor in spec. Despite its low price, it would struggle because of perception. Hello to Sean Martinez as well, who got in contact with the podcast this week, and I promised I would go through his email. Earlier in the week I was talking about e-bikes, and very quickly Sean says, I've been riding a manual cargo bike for 4 years, using it to haul our daughter and groceries and other supplies. Just before the stay-at-home orders, we purchased an e-cargo bike, a Harry versus Larry Bullet E6500, and I've put 600 miles on it already. I've cut the use of my pickup truck by 95%. I built a custom trailer to haul large loads, and I can even carry a 10-foot rain gutter, a fence board, or groceries and our daughter, all in our cargo bike. Range on Eco shows 90 miles, but that's on flat terrain with no load, and we live in a hill with an area with steep hills. The ultimate range extender is your own muscle power. Thank you very much, Sean, for chipping in on the subject of e-bikes, which I was talking about recently. You are my new... I'm going to hero worship you for making your own custom trailer. I'm jealous of not having those kind of skills. That's awesome. Thank you very much for everyone who emailed this week about whatever subject and got in contact with the podcast. Let's set a brand new question of the week then. Here we go. This will be your turn to join in, and I'll read out yours next Sunday. How far does a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle need to go on EV power? And don't say like 500 miles. It's not ridiculous. It's not realistic. But what do you think? I mean, if you were going to buy a plug-in hybrid, or you think somebody like your neighbour who's not into EVs, or someone who's got less knowledge about EVs than you, not really sure about EVs, they're thinking about a plug-in hybrid instead, how far do you think car makers should be making plug-in hybrid cars to go? And obviously it's an interesting question because you could just say, 100 miles. But then, of course, the battery size would be so big, the car wouldn't be affordable. So it's a bit of a trade-off that you've got to do this week. But I want to know your thoughts. How far does a plug-in hybrid need to go on EV-only power? Email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com, or leave a comment on the YouTube show. Thank you so much to 227 patrons of the podcast through a website called Patreon. This podcast gets funded, patreon.com/evnewsdaily. 801 previous shows in the archive. If you want to check out any previous podcast, I do recommend yesterday's, by the way, a deep dive into EV car insurance. Please do check it out. My premium partners, Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith Group for clean tech talent, Porsche of the Village Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, and Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East. My partners are David Allen, OEM Audio of New Zealand and evpower.co.nz, Paul O'Connor, tryev.com, Gareth Hamer, eMobility Norway. You can visit them at eMobilityNorway.com. Bob Boothby from Millbrook Cottages and Elopement Wedding Venue. Looking forward to doing some stuff with Bob this year, actually. Haven't got any firm plans yet because, as you may know, places like that are still working through the consequences of what we've been through. I can't imagine a business like Bob's. However, so they're not far away from me in the southwest, and saying southwest, that could be the location of the new Tesla Gigafactory. Could be on my doorstep, you never know. And at ev-resource.com. And thank you very much as well to all of my executive producers: Alan Robson, Alan Shedd, Alex Banahini, Alexander Frank, Anders Hope, Andrea Jefferson, Asir Khalid, Ashley Hill, Bjard Fuchstack, Brent Kingsford, Brian Thompson, Bruce Bohannon, Charles Hall, Chris Hopkins, Colin Hennessy and Cams EV, Craig Coles, Craig Rogers, Damien Davis, Darren Bird, Darren Feach, Darren Sant, Yorkshire EVs, Dave Jewson, David Barkman, David Finch, David Partington, David Prescott, Derek Riley from the Dublin EV Owners Club, and Don McAllister at screencastsonline.com. Enrico Stefanchillo, Eru Kyun Nyombi, Frederick Rovic, Free Jewel, Who's James, Gene Rubin, Gilberto Rosado, Jeff Lowe, Headley Wright, Ian Griffiths, Ian Sear, Ian Watty Watkins, Jack Oakley, James Storr, Jerry Allison, Jim Duggan, Jim Morris, John Bailey, John C. Solar, John Lacey, Click Like Video, NZ, John, who's Beardy McBeardface, and Ken TVs, John Nodell, Juan Gonzalez, Ken Morris, Kevin Mayerson, Carl Mahan, Lars Dallinger, Lawrence D. Allen, Lee Brown, Luke Cully, Marcel Lohman, Marcel Ward, Mark Bossop, Martin Croft, the Dorset Tradesman, Marty Young, and Matt Piccioni, Maz Shah, Mia Oppelstrup, Michael and Luke Turrell. No, it's Turrell. Double R, double L. Yeah, phew, got it right. Michael Pastroni. An insight into my mind as I'm speaking. Mike Rogers, Mike Winter, Nathan Gore Brown, Neil E. Roberts from Sussex EVs, Nigel Miles, Northern Explorers, Ohad Aston, Paul Ridings, Paul Stevenson, Perry Simpkins, Pete Glass, Pete Gordon, Peter and D. Roberts from Oxon EVs, Phil Mouchet, Philip Troutman, Pontus Kinblatt, Raj Badwell, Rajiv Narayan, Renee Schneider, Rob Cooling at appledriving.co.uk, Rob Ammons, Robert Grace, Robin Tanner, Rupert Mitchell, Sari Kangasoja, Seiki Payne, Stephen Penn, Steve John, Thomas J. Tierce, the Plug Seeker and his EV YouTube channel, Tim Gutteridge and William Langhorne. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow for the start of a brand new week. And remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.